Greetings and welcome to another Diablo 2 Resurrected video. Today I want to show you the elemental martial arts assassin, which has been greatly improved since the latest patch, mainly due to the new runelet Mosaic. More to that later. Let's dive into the skills first. This will look familiar because we have tested this over and over, especially like when patch 2.4 I think it was introduced. This was one of my first videos I made about Phoenix Strike martial arts assassin, which I really liked back then, but now it just exploded and it's really good. So it's 20 points in the Fist of Fire, Claws of Thunder, Blades of Ice, and Phoenix Strike to get all these synergies to pump up your Phoenix Strike, but also pump up these ones individually because you can use all of them at once. More to that later. Then I opted to put 1 point in the Dragonflight, which we don't really need here because we are running Enigma, but if you don't have Enigma, Dragonflight is superb to your mobility. Rest of my points in the Dragon Tail, which amounts to 15 base here on a level 93 assassin. So if you have 5 more levels, then put in the Dragon Tail, and if it gives you more kicks, then it's the better. And 1 into Claw Mastery, 1 to Burst of Speed, 1 to Fade, and 1 to Weapon Block. We can actually use Fade here very comfortably to raise up our resistances and have maxed out resistances here. We don't really need a Burst of Speed because we are teleporting around with Enigma. Speaking of, going into the inventory, we have a Shaco with a Jam Rune to get the Can't Be Frozen and the +2 skills. You can also use something like a Nightwing's Wail if you want more cold damage. You can also use a Griffin's Eye if you want more faster cast rate and also the lightning damage. There are different options here. You can also use a Harp if you are like on a budget, but more on that maybe in another video if I want to go over a budget build of this, which is pretty hard because, as I already mentioned, Mosaic is the bread and butter of this build, and it has a Maul and a Gull, which is not really budget, but it's already also not high end. You can farm for this, especially the Maul rune maybe at the counters. The Gull rune will be a bit harder to come by though. But yeah, speaking of Mosaic, it has a 50% chance for finishing moves to not consume charges, and if you run 2 of those, your finishing moves will never consume charges. Mind blown, right? Also, if you use your finishing move, then your charges will reset on the timer. Like normally they will run out after a time if they're not consumed, but if you use a finishing move, it will not do so. So keep on hitting with your finishing move and it will always have charges. Aside from that, it has 2 to martial arts, which is very nice, boosts up your damage, a bit of increase in attack speed and enhanced damage. We don't really need the enhanced damage for this build, like we're not doing like really physical damage, but it's nice to have like for leeching and stuff. Also a bit of bonus attack rating, which is also helpful. Then the Lifestorm hit comes from the Am rune. Then a nice 8 to 15% roll of cold skill, lightning skill, and fire skill damage, which rolled pretty poorly here, but it is something to maybe roll over again if you want like maximum damage here. Also this claw base comes with +3 to Phoenix Strike to further our damage. You could also go with something like +3 to Claws of Thunder, +3 to Blades of Ice, +1 to Dragonflight for the mobility. So it's very flexible in that, and you can boost your damage even further. Prevent Monster Heal is a nice to have. The other one is basically the same, but you can see the varying roll on the cold, lightning, and fire skill damage here. Other than that, we are running Maras for the All Res and 2 to skills. You can also run maybe a High Lords. You can also run like any rare amulet with +2 to skills, maybe even a blue one with +3 to martial arts, and then something with it. So +2 skills is very essential in boosting your damage with this build, but it will run great even though you're not maxed out. You will see in a second. Talia's boots for some resistances and faster run walk. I opted here for a dual leech ring. You can also use like a BK ring, Stone of Jordan, a Raven Frost if you don't have a Jam rune in your helmet, Enigma for teleport. It's not essential because the assassin in itself has like pretty great mobility, so you can maybe even run a hustle and run around very fast and then just Dragon Talon on all the enemies. I potentially will show this in a budget variant of this, but of course Enigma is the bread and butter, the go-to here if you want the maximum mobility out of your build. Alongside the Resurrected Smash, very nice for some faster cast rate, and of course the only build that gives us +2 all skills. But then again, I mean, you could use a Travincal if you need to cannot be frozen here or something else. Like, it is nice, but it is not mandatory here. Then the Stone of Jordan ring, again, +2 skills. And these are like incredible gloves. We don't really need to increase attack speed, and we can also use just blue +3 martial arts gloves, but it's always nice to have some additional things in it. But these are like, of course, hero edited. These are pretty very, very great, and you likely won't find them out in the wild. So don't take this too seriously here. They can be very, very less good than this, because you don't need all these stats. I mean, we don't need crushing blow, for example. Don't really need the life zone per hit, but it's nice to have, and strength, life, etc. As we jumped, of course, we want to go with martial arts skillers, like some with life maybe. Fast recovery is nice to hit certain breakpoints. Torch and Annie, of course, and then just like charms with life or resistances, whatever you need. Like maybe also like resistances that you still need to max out, even though you're using Fate. We can also use something like Cold Rupture if you want to lean on more to the cold damage, as well as like the Lightning Thunder or the Fire Thunder, depends on your playstyle. As for body armor, you can also use Ormus, because there's a nice +2 skill damage here. It doesn't really apply to Phoenix Strike as far as I can tell, at least from the character sheet damage, or the skill damage. It does not really change if you... if you look at that on the Phoenix Strike, for example, the chain lightning damage is 3 to 12,384. If you put on Ormus, it is less because we have less plus skills. So it should be higher, because it should be like 15% more, but it doesn't really apply. But it does apply to Claws of Thunder, for example, which now is on the charge 1 to 8,800. If you put on the Ormus, it's 1 to 9,267, despite being less skill level. So you will be using these two. This is not like a solely Phoenix Strike build like in the past, because we are not losing charges, finishing moves. We will be extensively using potentially all of these. I mean, you can just charge up all of these and use them. So that's as far as items go. Chains of Honor is all an option, like Travincals, Gore Riders, Mage Fist, like the usual stuff, you know, that's just like up there on the mid-level or high-end things. The Mercenary also pretty high-end in this case. Infinity, of course, greatly helps boost all our damage, all our mental damage. Fortitude and Vamp Gaze, anything that keeps the Mercenary alive, we don't really rely on that. It's his or hers damage, but the Infinity, of course, will boost up very nicely. You could also run like a Act 5 Mercenary with double Plague and get that low resist procs, but due to the nature of us being very fast and dishing out our damage pretty fast, we may not have the time to wait for the low resist to proc. Pretty straightforward attributes, enough strength to equip your Enigma in that case, or your gear, and then a little bit of dex because of the Subayas, which might not be the best bases. You can also use like Runic Talents or Greater Talents, which have less requirements, because we don't really mind the physical damage. It doesn't really matter to us. The point is to search for a good +2 skills base. So whatever it is, it will be fine. You don't even need the highest attack speed on here, because we have 20% here. We can use burst of speed if you want, can get something from the gear, but as long as you have your charges up, which is like the initial build up, you can just like dish them out very, very fast with Dragon Kick. So sorry, Dragon Talon, of course. So it doesn't really matter. So search for a good base with 3 open sockets and +2 Phoenix Strike or Claws of Thunder, whatever you want. It would be great. And then, of course, Rest in Vitality, which gives us 2,000 life. Along with like a CTA is a lot of life here. Right. But we buff us up. We have like 3,500 life, which is a lot. Go back for a second. I think I touched on everything like in terms of character build. Sorry about that. And yeah, you can also add some more skills or something. I opted for some room here. Doesn't really matter. You will see that this will destroy already. We are on players 8 right now. And I'm gonna show you how it works. So here for the skills, we can charge up everything. So let's find some monsters initially. Let's get some Phoenix Strike going. Whoops, I was accidentally pressing the finishing move. And we can also pump up all the other skills. the claws. And now you see we have a lot going on here. And it's just an explosion, an amalgam of everything. And it just looks great. Now you want to find new monsters pretty quickly, I guess. I'm not sure on the timing. I mean, you have a decent time until your charges run out. And as long as you're hitting with your finishing move, it will refresh the timer. So there's basically nothing that can stand in our way right now. And again, this is players 8. The only thing even, we have a little bit too much damage, I would say, because we are standing here kicking too much. So it might even be better to invest less points into Dragon Talon, so you have less kicks. Because as you can see, maybe you can see, because there's a lot going on, I'm kicking, and then I cannot move until all the kicks are resolved. But my enemy is already dead, right? So it might be beneficial to have less kicks, actually, because this is already P8. I mean, how high can you go? It doesn't go much faster, let me tell you. I mean, you can have a little bit more plus skills, and what is also very important, right now we are only hitting with the Chaos Orb in terms of our Phoenix Strike. So since we are not using or consuming any charges, this will also always be the charge 3 one if you have 3 charges. So if you want to go with Chain Lightning, which significantly is more damage, it's like up to 12,000, only get 2 charges. If you only want Meteor, only get 1 charge from Phoenix Strike. On these here, it doesn't really matter, because usually the highest one also gives you like the most damage. But on this one, I mean, maybe there's an argument for Fist of Fire, but I think the charge 1 always goes off also with charge 3, and just adds something to it. But the Phoenix Strike is different. Like, we go here, let me quickly get it here with my mouse and keyboard. Phoenix Strike, if we just do 1 charge, and then we release, and you can see, boom, 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 all the meteors falling down, which just looks awesome, right? Now I accidentally got 2 charges on it, and then, okay, these are lightning immune by nature, but as you can see, it's only lightning, and it just looks awesome. This might be the most damage, and then we add on Claws of Thunder, Blades of Ice, Fist of Fire, and then we get this. And this is just incredible. And of course, some of these are immune to some of the elements, and as you can see here, my mercenary died because I was careless, and it's players 8. And we just had the ice damage to go, the cold damage to go through that monster. You can also like charge up Cobra Strike to get more leech for you, because you was maybe saw that I was using some mana potions, but we also have Cobra Strike. We have 1 point in Cobra Strike with the plus skills. It is still awesome, and we can leech some. Of course, those are undead, and we leech I think less on those. And we don't have the greatest physical damage. Some undeads you don't even leech, so. But I feel like Doom Knights we leech a little bit. Not pretty sure, not sure on that. Well, anyways, I mean, the only limiting factor here is actually how many kicks you can get out and how well your PC will compute all these effects, because it is crazy what is going on here. And of course, we do a little less damage without Infinity, but you can see we're still on P8, and we still have not many problems to go through all of these. I mean, it does take a little bit longer, of course, because these are, for example, fire immune. I mean, we're missing some fire damage. But overall, for like players 8 build, scratch the Enigma and the Infinity, and you still are doing like tons of damage and having like mostly good time, or like a great time, I would say. I don't have like my Dragon Flight right now, but you can also use Dragon Flight, of course, if you don't have Infinity, and it will work greatly. Oop. If I kick the air, like you can see here, if I kick, it takes a long time until I can move again. That's why I'm saying like maybe now I have no charges. I'm pretty vulnerable like that, especially if I'm cursed and everything, but Fate helps with that. So you see, you have sometimes these downtimes, and I have a hard time hitting actually right now, because I also don't have my Infinity here. But once you have some charges up, you're good to go. You don't need all of them, you just need some of them. And yeah, then you might like want to change up what kind of Phoenix charges you want to use. Like maybe it's a heavy cold resistant area, then just use like 2 charges for heavy lightning damage. And if you're going against bosses, maybe 1 charge is the best, because Meteor does a lot of damage on bosses, you know. So yeah, but that's about it for the martial arts, and it is very, very great. And I want to like try this like in a more budget-oriented build. Of course, what is mandatory is Mosaic, so you're gonna spend at least 1 Malgol M, and I feel like maybe it's not as good if you only have 1 Mosaic, so you want 2 of them. But it is something to try out and to experiment with. How good is one of these, and is it enough for like maybe player 3 or something? But for players 8 build, I mean, it is still more on the cheaper side, I'd say. I mean, just scratch the Enigma. It's just for mobility, actually. And yeah, mobility is important, but if you have like something like Burst of Speed and Dragon Flight, you have a good mobility already, and you can reposition your Merc with Dragon Flight to be with you. So I always felt like for Assassin, it's not essential to have an Enigma. You can also run a Cat's Eye for even more faster on walk. So maybe with a Hustle, maybe that's actually a good substitute, because it has a lot faster on walk. But we will see in the future. Stay tuned for more videos on that. And thank you for watching. Good luck, have fun, and goodbye.